Hi, everyone.
Hello there. We're starting chapter 12 in Search of Christian Freedom. Indoctrination and Subordination. Ray begins this chapter with a quote from James. The wisdom from above is in the first place pure, and then peace-loving, considerate, and open to reason. It is straightforward and sincere, rich in mercy, and in the kindly deeds that are its fruit. That James 3:17 in the New English Bible. Ray begins the chapter, a common characteristic of mass movements in general is that they express keen concern for the individual and the individual's interests. Yet, paradoxically, they usually produce a subordination of the individual, a discouragement of individual thinking. Conformity and uniformity are urged as crucial for the success of the movement, for its progress and growth. The individual has no importance except as he or she contributes to the success of the movement. All interests and all thinking must be subordinate to that goal. The Watchtower Society has made forceful statements about subordination and indoctrination in two different ways. One is with regard to information coming from outside sources. The other is with regard to acceptance of the information it itself provides. This unequal standard leads to a paradox like that described above.
And he has a new subheading, the power to resist indoctrination. During the past half-century, Jehovah's Witnesses have made a notable record in resisting brainwashing techniques, particularly on the part of totalitarian systems, such as Nazism, that have tried to indoctrinate them with their ideologies. The January 1st, 1959 issue of the Watchtower magazine presented this quotation about their record. Quote, a book published in the British Isles in 1957 called Battle for the Mind, A Physiology of Conversion and Brainwashing said, quote, those reported as among the best able to preserve their standards and beliefs in the German concentration camps during World War II were members of the sect of Jehovah's Witnesses. This pacifist religious group has many strange beliefs, but these were implanted with such strength and certainty by their religious leaders as to remain operative when continued debilitation and psychological degradation had reduced most other people of the highest ideals, but no specific loyalties to accept the very lowest conception of individual and group morality. A safeguard against conversion is indeed a burning and obsessive belief in some other creed or way of life. History shows that well-indoctrinated and trained soldiers can be just as brave and stubborn as Jehovah's Witnesses. End of quote.
Ray goes on, in the infamous concentration camps, as in labor camps and in prisons, and in the face of persecution in other forms, Jehovah's Witnesses have shown a very high resistance to political indoctrination. Having personally lived through periods of intense adverse public feeling and pressure, mob violence and life-threatening situations, and having witnessed what it is like to live under a dictatorial government, I have no doubt as to the intensity of devotion of Jehovah's Witnesses generally in facing such stressful trials. I know how I felt, and I believe I know how most of them feel in such times of testing. Note, however, that the source of the above Watchtower item quotes makes the valid point that others besides Jehovah's Witnesses can and have displayed resistance to brainwashing with comparable success, including, quote, well-indoctrinated and trained soldiers, unquote. Thus it is often a case of one indoctrination versus another. At times both may be of a political and nationalistic origin, or they may both be of a religious nature, or views stemming from one of these sources may be pitted against views originating with one of the others.
Mere ability to resist, then, does not guarantee that the strength of the resistance necessarily springs from scriptural convictions about the rightness or wrongness of certain actions. People in the past, as in the present, have been willing to undergo severe trials while holding to beliefs very different from, and sometimes opposite to, what Jehovah's Witnesses hold. History shows that people have at times been willing to sacrifice their lives to be obedient to a certain leadership, even when calm thought would show that that leadership was far removed from the example of Jesus Christ. The basis for one's beliefs, the means by which one came to be governed by those beliefs, must be the determining factor then, as to whether the resistance is actually born of genuine Christianity or not.
Consider briefly what the Watchtower and Awake magazines have said about indoctrination, mass persuasion, and brainwashing, and about the means to counteract these. The June 15th, 1956 issue of the Watchtower made these interesting and valid points on pages 358 and 359. Quote, "Note the admonition, prove to yourselves," that from Romans 12:2 in the New World Translation. "If you can prove to yourself from the Bible the thoughts of God you have adopted, no brainwashing will sweep them from your mind. It is not enough to know what you believe, know why you believe it." An article in the New York Times Magazine, May 9th, 1954, discussed communist brainwashing techniques and concluded there is only one form of immunization against the totalitarian attack on human convictions. That one way was shown to be having deep convictions and thorough understanding of your belief. Otherwise, the article said, you will become an easy and willing victim, howling with the wolves in the woods. That's the end of the quote from the June 15th, 56 Watchtower.
And then Ray continues, "Deep conviction is here urged for the true Christian. The kind of conviction is not something attained on a group basis. It must be arrived by the individual through personal thought, study, and conclusions. The inspired exhortation to prove to yourself the will of God clearly calls for that kind of personal thought." Farther along this same article says, on page 360, "We usually believe what we want to believe, and one thing we like to believe is that we do our own thinking. Hence it is not too hard for clever propagandists to make us think their thoughts are ours. They plant the thought and nourish it, but do it so subtly that we may think it is our own. We may not be overreached by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his designs. We should know the clever tricks of propagandists. They are many, but to mention one, unsavory labels are stuck on anything that they oppose. But to be pushed around by such social pressure, to be shoved and maneuvered by a fear of labels, is to show a pathetic immaturity, an inability to think for ourselves, a lack of intelligent convictions." And that was the end of that quote. Ray continues, "To fail to do your own thinking, to be influenced by pressure and unsavory labels, is to show pathetic immaturity." This material says that the publishers of this information should be the same ones who would cause the expression independent thinker to become an unsavory label among its own members may seem incredible, but that will be shown to be the case.
Incredible indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to link here on your screen to Jacques Ellul's book, Propaganda, a review I did of it last year, and I learned a lot from Jacques Ellul as to the nature of propaganda. And in the next segment, Ray is going to look at a Watchtower article from the Awake of 1978, and the article's subject, "Do others do your thinking? Propaganda has power. Does it overpower you, or do you have a mind of your own?" That's in the next segment.